all lock ourselves in this room for the week and solve these issues. I want to ask a couple questions just to kind of give me a frame. I imagine most of you in the room are familiar with William McDonough and the work of Cradle to Cradle. I'm curious, is anybody in here not familiar with Cradle to Cradle? It's okay if you're saying, okay, good. That's good. That gives me a little bit of a background. And how many of you are aware that there's a product certification program that is Cradle to Cradle standard? Great. And then how many are you aware of the Institute, the Cradle to Cradle Products Certification? Okay, the program in the Institute. Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about who we are and just educate you about how we work and what we're about. So let's see if this, am I aiming this at a particular place? Okay. Well, somebody may have to show me how to work this quickly before I'm... There we go. So there's no doubt, and I think most of the conversations this morning and this afternoon are going to address a lot of the growing issues of environmental concerns. And you know, we read them constantly. We're hearing about many statistics in terms of how we're having a negative impact in the way we produce products on the earth. And so much of the focus that companies have today are about reducing the bad, you know, and scaling away from what they're doing and spending a lot of time in life cycle analysis and looking at the negative impact of what they're doing. But we see that there's a solution that is different than that, and the Cradle to Cradle certification program really is about looking at what needs to happen now on a larger scale to move away from this less bad conversation and into the more good. So. All right. This is going to be a slow talk if this doesn't go faster. Okay. So, all right. It would be helpful if somebody running this show could just give me the insight into this real quickly, and then I'll move forward. No? All right. Yeah, that would be helpful. Okay, here we go. So many of you are probably familiar with some of the work that's come out of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the circular economy and the reports that they've done with McKinsey. And I think there's no doubt there's also a tremendous opportunity in terms of what generated savings there are, as well as goods and services increases to the economy, as well as the recovery of e-waste, which are some of the statistics that Ron gave us this morning and some of the others. And for us, we see that Cradle to Cradle certification really is the engine to the circular economy. And we don't have to start from scratch because there's a legacy here and there's a history of companies, nearly 200 that have worked in this methodology to show that material reutilization does work. So for those of you who are not aware, Cradle to Cradle is a design philosophy. It was made popularized by Bill McDonough, who's in the room with us today, and his colleague Michael Bromgart. And I had the privilege of working in the carpet industry before coming here. I was at Mohawk Industries. One of our largest competitors was doing this thing called Cradle to Cradle, and I got a copy of the book and read it, and the light bulb went off for me. And soon thereafter, I met Bill, and they were discussing how they wanted to really scale the certification program globally and create the Institute as the body that would do that. And so I found myself in this opportunity to help build this standard. So our role at the Institute is really to scale Cradle to Cradle certification. And for those of you who are just learning a little bit about Cradle to Cradle, we look at products through the lens of two metabolisms, everything that is a biological nutrient or a technical nutrient. And so the beginning of the process in working with Cradle to Cradle certification is to work with our assessors, of which McDonough Bromgart Design Chemistry, and Jay Bolus is here today, is the founder of that. And we've also trained an additional 12 certification accredited assessor bodies who are also doing this work. That training comes from MBDC. They've been helping us to scale more and more groups who can do this work with them as well. So a little bit of the history of the timeline here is that, and it goes back before 2002 in terms of Bill and Michael's work, but in 2002 the book Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things came out. The certification program then was launched shortly after, around 2005. The Institute was founded in 2010, And in 2012, the public version of the certification program, which we call version 3.0, became available. So those who are now working with future versions of certification would be working with version 3.0, and it's a public and transparent version which you can go to our website and download and take a look at what's in it. Still working with accredited assessor bodies in order to do the work. So just to give you an idea of just the overarching kind of who is the Institute and how we're different, we are not the consultants, we are not the assessors, we don't do that work. What we do is we help govern and operate the development of the standard itself. So that makes us the scheme owner as well as the certification body. And then we work with our founders and their organizations and the other assessor bodies that they've trained who actually do the assessment, the optimization consulting, and ultimately the certification. And the paperwork comes back to the Institute, who then takes a look at that and issues the certification mark. So our mission at the Institute is about making a global transformation by turning the making of things into a positive force for people, economy, and planet. And as I said earlier, we are a nonprofit. We are licensed through NBDC to maintain and improve upon this rigorous standard, the certification program. And we are the exclusive authority that NBDC has given to us to operate that. And that our role at the Institute is also not just the governance of this standard, but also to generate the demand. So our 4 goals within the Institute are to create cradle-to-cradle certification as a preferred quality standard, to increase capacity, to increase demand and spur innovation. So we can oftentimes in the relationship be one of the first conversations you may have as one of the people on our team, or you may have a conversation with someone at NBDC or one of the other assessor bodies. But our role is also to help have conversations with manufacturers, suppliers, retailers in order to scale cradle-to-cradle certification. So as many of you are aware, as I said earlier, there have been close to 200 companies who've done this work. That number is growing. This is obviously not all of the companies that are doing that work. But what's great about it is we talk about creating this circular economy. We don't have to reinvent. This work is being done. It has been done for over a decade. Plus, when you go back to the origin of the relationships that Bill and Michael have with many companies, you see cradle to cradle really embedded in a lot of the current initiatives around recycling and around sustainability, and as I said, the certification program, them coming out over 10 years ago. So quickly, as I know I just have about 2 minutes left in my quick overview, just to remind those of you and also address some of the new folks in the room, what are we talking about when we talk about product assessment? And there's 5 principles that are outlined in the book and as well as in the standard itself. Material health is the first one, understanding what's in your product down to the parts per million, and then taking a look at whether it is a biological nutrient or a technical nutrient, and ensuring the safety and health of those materials moving forward. Secondly is the elimination of the concept of waste, which is material reutilization. And I'll say, when we talk, the question came up about taboo, in recycling. I think we applaud so many of these great, interesting initiatives that companies are engaging in around recycling or upcycling, but sometimes we're stopping at just one life beyond the first. And I think what we're not doing is completing the story. What cradle-to-cradle assessment and certification and the guidance helps you do is create that forward thinking so that materials are continuously renewable and regenerative and into future cycles, not necessarily closed loop, oftentimes open loops to other manufacturers and other products in other industries, but really creating this network and system. The third one is power with abundant clean energy. The vision is that we index away from our dependency on non-renewables. Finally, water stewardship as it pertains to not only local systems of water, but also into the health and wellness of water and what's getting into the effluents. And then finally, respect to human health and natural systems, which is that we do all of this and we also honor human life, and we also look at the communities in which these products are manufactured. So as a continuous improvement model, this sets us somewhat different than a lot of the eco-labels that are out there. Cradle to Cradle is not an eco-label. We're a continuous improvement model. We're multi-attribute. We look at, as I said, those 5 principles. And this is a slide that I'll just show quickly that Bill McDonough has created and that we borrowed with permission from them. But it takes a look at how the stages of creating this initial assessment that you would work with an assessor On the left, you have an inventory of all of the types of materials and types of initiatives that are engaged in your company. And so as you take an inventory and you assess those, then you look at them not so much as scaling down to the less bad, which would be below the line. This red is the less bad, but it's also about scaling up the more good and the positive, so that rather than focusing so much on just eliminating what we're doing not properly, we're really encouraging that regenerative, positive, building upon projects. So taking everything that you do and then look at it through the lens of scaling down the less bad, but at the same time increasing the more good. And this is just quickly to give you an idea. There are many certification programs and schemes that are out there. We've been working with the U.S. Green Building Council through a grant with Google in order to ensure that there's harmonization with some of the existing certification programs for the built environment. This doesn't mean we're merging or blending with them, but it's important to understand that many of these single attribute initiatives also fit in with Cradle to Cradle. And as we start to look at different standards and how they look at different parts, there's a lot of opportunity for them to become part of this continuous improvement model of Cradle to Cradle. So again, as I said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's across many, many industries, our certification program does actually embrace and engage in positive change. And then one thing is I'll leave, which I wanted to just mention. I mentioned it a little bit at dinner last night. About 60% of the products that have been certified are in the built environment. There's been a tremendous lift in the work that's been done with manufacturers in products for buildings. The next sector that we're engaging in is around textiles and apparel, looking at the fashion industry. We've called this initiative Fashion Positive because it is the path to positive. Many of the current initiatives in the fashion industry are about negative. They're about putting you on the list, the detox campaign, and other initiatives that sort of wag fingers at the negative. We want to show that cradle-to-cradle design principles and thus the certification program can actually improve upon the materials that are used, the building blocks of fashion, and then demonstrate through case studies, through proof of concept projects with fashion brands, that we actually have an opportunity to show a positive list. And if we did create a list, it would be a list of the companies that are doing the positive things. So we were able to raise funding of €1 million in order to put into a revolving fund that we would give out grants and loans to the supply chain, working in partnership with brands who would then work to create collections, capsule collections, and signature products to demonstrate cradle-to-cradle assessment and certification within the fashion industry. So stay tuned on that. We'll be announcing soon our first partner, and I think the next 12 to 14 months looks like about 5 proof of concept projects with many, many supply chain partners to join in that. So if any of you are part of that industry, we invite you to come up and speak to us. And imagine, again, as I'll leave you with, imagine a world where there's no waste, where all materials are healthy and safe, that is 100% cleanly, renewably powered, and where consumption is a good thing. All right, thank you so much.